Hello everyone, this is me. It's 1 week prior to the conference and I went out 7 o'clock in the morning to get some sun to film for you the royal route of Krakow, the e-tour of the city of Krakow. It's -10 and it's a lot of snow, so you will have a chance to see it on the way. We are starting the tour in the northern part of the city, outside of the medieval old town, on Matejko Square. Matejko Square is known as the beginning of the so-called royal route, the beginning of many touristic trails and a site of interesting historical places. We are now looking at the monument of the Grunwald battle. It is commemorating a great victory of the Polish and Lithuanian Commonwealth Army that took place in 1410 in the city of Grunwald. You can see here Beated Ulrich von Jungingen, the great master of the Teutonic Knights, and above him Prince Witold, and on the top of the monument, on the horse, the great King of Poland, Władysław Jagiełło. The Polish victory against the Teutonic Order is known as one of the most glorious moments of Polish history, and every Polish school kid knows its date by heart. The Matejko Square has more interesting sights. In the back of it, we can see the St. Florian Church. It's a Baroque structure that was built on a former medieval church. On the facade, you can see in the bas-relief St. Florian, the patron of the church and the patron of the city. His relics are placed partly here in this church and partly in the cathedral of the Wawel Hill. The Matejko Square is also known for this building. It is the Academy of Fine Arts of Krakow. It was founded in the 19th century and its patron and first rector is famous Polish painter Jan Matejko. We will be now heading towards the old town of Krakow, but to get there we have to first cross the remnants of the medieval city walls. In the old times, the city walls were over 4 kilometers long. They had 47 watchtowers and 8 gates. The city walls were also surrounded by a vast moat that almost made impossible the conquest of the city. Only in the 19th century the city walls were demolished and the moat was transformed into a park. We are now looking at what is left out of this amazing example of the defensive medieval architecture. This is the Barbican. There's only a few Barbicans left in the whole Europe. Our Barbican is from 15th century. It's a round shape made out of brick defensive building. It was also surrounded by a moat. It has never been conquered by anyone. Now, when you come to Krakow personally, you can visit it. In front of the Barbican, there is the only remaining part of the defensive city wall that is left. 3 towers and the St. Florian Gate. If we look to the right, we will see a weird modern monument. It is commemorating the very same Jan Matejko that we saw on the Matejko Square as the patron of the Academy of Fine Arts. If we were now in Krakow together, I would have invited you to approach this map, but you can see the heaps of snow that are preventing us from doing it. I will zoom the map so you can see the royal route that is marked on the plan. It goes from the north, where we are right now, where you can see the red dot, and it goes down through the old town by the main market square to the south, where you can see the round shape of the Wawel Hill, the former residence of the Polish kings. But before we get there, we have to have a look at the St. Florian Gate with the white eagle on the front of the facade. It's the only one of the gates that is left till today, and it is leading us towards the old town, where we'll walk through it like the kings used to when they were going out of the city on trips, journeys, or wars. Once we cross the gate, we are in the old town of Krakow, and ahead of us there is Florianska Street, the most commercial street of the city, today rather empty because of the pandemia and of the early hour of the day. On the other side of the St. Florian Gate, you can once again see the patron of the city, Saint Florian. He is protecting the city against the fire, hence you can see him with a bucket full of water. To the right of the gate, there is a very important institution, the Czartoryski Museum, which is the oldest museum in Poland, founded by an aristocratic family, the Czartoryski family, in 1876. In its collection, the most known painting is the painting of Leonardo da Vinci, The Lady with the Ermine. Before we continue along the royal route, I wanted to show you what's on the other side of the St. Florian Gate. This is the Słowacki Theatre. It was built in the end of the 19th century, and it was designed by a Polish Jewish architect, Jan Zawiejski. At that time, there was a lot of Jewish people living in Poland, and specifically in Krakow. They represented both Orthodox, very religious, and Reformed communities. They represented in Krakow 25% of the city population. To design this theatre, Zawiejski was inspired by the building of the Opera Garnier in Paris. Ahead of us, there is Szpitalna Street, and at the end of it, the two towers of the Wawel Hill. Meanwhile, you can see a typical scene from Krakow, a religious nun that is cleaning the street in front of her convent. These are the duties and consequences of living in a country where sometimes winters are harsh. Szpitalna Street is representative for most of the streets in the old town of Krakow. It has many shops, restaurants, churches, public institutions, but very few local private residents. And now we got to the so-called Little Square, which is adjacent to the main big square that we'll see in a moment. The city plan of Krakow dates back to the 13th century, when Krakow received citizenship laws. But the buildings that you can see here dates back mostly to 15th and 16th centuries. Today, almost all the facades of the buildings in the old town are beautifully renovated. Now, let's have a look at the main square and the St. Mary's Basilica. Bearing in mind the slippery and the heaps of snow, we are getting closer to see the western facade of the St. Mary's Church. The basilica was founded in the 14th century and is one of the most beautiful and extraordinary examples of the Gothic art in Europe. It is a parish church, which means a church for the citizens of Krakow. It has also been founded by the citizens, the wealthiest citizens, which in this case were the merchants. And why merchants were the wealthiest? Because Krakow has been a top destination of medieval trade cities of Europe. The product that was found here and was desired by many was salt. And it was the salt that enriched the city and the royal budget. When you come to Krakow, you can visit a medieval salt mine in Wieliczka, just half an hour away from Krakow, which is a great attraction visited by many every year. We are now approaching the miniature of the Basilica of the Virgin Mary. There is a whole trail of miniatures like this that are designed for the blind people. When you look at the silhouette of the miniature, you can easily see that the two towers on the frontal facade are different. The reason why is explained by the legend about the two brothers that were building the towers. The story is based on a biblical story of Cain and Abel, so you can guess what happened. One brother killed another one out of jealousy that his tower was small. He killed him with a knife, and we'll have the chance to see it in a few moments. As it says on the miniature, the higher tower is called Heinalica, and the famous bugle call is played from it every hour, day and night, all year round. It is a beautiful melody and a symbol of Krakow, known here almost as a second national anthem. Nobody knows who composed the tune and when the tradition started, but you can be sure that when you come to Krakow, you will hear it many times, and maybe even download it as a ringtone to your phone. And now I have a surprise for you. We'll enter the church and we'll see the magnificent altarpiece made by Weizstosch in 15th century during the ceremony of the opening. This extraordinary piece of the Gothic art has been under renovation for the last 5.5 years. It has only been finished last week, and I managed to film for you the ceremony that came back every day at noon. The altar is made by Weizstosch, a German sculptor that came to Krakow to do this work. It took him 12 years, and he depicted in it many scenes. There's over 200 figures carved in 3 types of wood. The main name of the altar is the Assumption of the Virgin Mary, which means the Dormition of the Virgin Mary. But on both wings, on both sides, there are many scenes from the life of Jesus and Mary depicted and sculpted in wood. Apart from the altar, the basilica is known for its amazing, colorful Art Nouveau polychromy that was made in the 19th century, and medieval, colorful stained glass windows that are behind the main altar. Have a look at the ceiling that pretends to be the sky full of stars. And once again at the altar, you are one of the first foreign visitors who are able to see it after so many years of renovations. I'm very happy I was able to give you that chance. And finally we are on the main market square of Krakow, the beating heart of the city. The main market square of Krakow is the biggest medieval main market square of Europe. It's exactly a square, 200 meters per 200 meters. It was laid out in 1257, like the rest of the city, and its main function was trade. There were markets of many different products all over it. Today, it's rather empty. There's just a few buildings on it. First of all, we see the monument. This is the monument of Adam Mickiewicz, most famous Polish romantic poet. Behind it, we can see the small chapel of Saint Adalbert that we'll see in the end of the tour. And once again, we'll have another look at the St. Mary's Basilica with its bizarre and original facade of 2 towers with different heights. And now we'll have a look at the Cloth Hall, the building in the center of the main market square. It's the remnant of the merchant function of the medieval Krakow. Today, in the Cloth Hall, you can find the stands with souvenirs and local artisans. When walking through the Cloth Hall, and you look to the right, you'll see an astonishing object. Isn't that a knife that one brother killed another one when they were building the towers of St. Mary's Basilica? Hanging here as a sign of warning. We will now go to see the second part of the main market square, with symmetrical patterns made by the footsteps of people in the snow. It's rather empty. You can admire the beautiful facades of the buildings of merchants, aristocrats, and public institutions. built from the 15th century onwards. There's also a lonely tower, the tower of the former town hall. The town hall itself was demolished in the 19th century by the Austrians when the city was occupied, together with the whole country, for 123 years of the partitions of Poland. The Austrians who governed the city modernized it and demolished a lot of the buildings, among them also the town hall, and they built a new one. Today, just the tower is left, but it's no longer part of the town hall. It plays the role of a local attraction. You can climb it, you can watch the mechanism of the old clock. And people say it's also leaning, just 6 degrees, but who knows? Maybe in hundreds of years it will be another Pisa Tower example. Once again, we can see the miniature that is depicting how the building used to look like before the destruction made by the Austrians in the 19th century. You can see here the buildings made in the Renaissance style of architecture. They housed not only the town hall, but also a prison and a torture chamber. Outside of the town hall, there was an execution place. We will move now towards a rather unusual object, unusual for Krakow, because this is a modern piece of art, and we find not many examples of those in our city. This bronze sculpture is made by Igor Nitoraj, Polish sculptor, and it depicts Eros, the god of love. It's titled Eros Bendato, bandaged Eros, which one can interpret as a wounded love. We are now heading towards another exceptional site on the railroad of Krakow. This is Collegium Majus, the oldest building of the Krakow University, the Jagiellonian University that was founded in 1364, and it's the oldest in our country. The Collegium Majus building is from the beginning of the 15th century, and it now houses the museum of the Jagiellonian University. We'll enter the courtyard so that you can have a look at this splendid Gothic architecture. The Jagiellonian University was founded in 14th century by the King Kazimierz the Great, but only 30 years after his death, Queen Jadwiga, in her testament, gave all her treasures and money to found the building of the university. And this is it, the very same building that was transformed thanks to the legacy of the Queen Jadwiga, and where first lectures took place and the professors lived on the first floor. Meetings of the rectors and promotions for the scientific degrees still take place in this building, which makes it the longest operating, still active university building in the world. During the touristic season, 3 times a day from those green doors, the figurines connected to the history of the university are going out, and you can listen to the anthem of the university, Gaudeamus Igitur. And if you manage to jump over those heaps of snow and ice, you can get to the fountain of intelligence. People say that if you place your hand in the mouth of the monster, you will become much wiser. Above the arcade, you can see the emblem of the university, 2 crossed scepters. The scepter is the symbol of the power of the rector, but it's also a symbol of the donation of Queen Jadwiga for the university. Outside of the university, there is an academic church, St. Anne Church. It is a Baroque structure designed by Tilman from Glamoran. It has an interesting facade, 3-dimensional, that you can admire from a short perspective, even from this narrow street. We will be now turning towards the park called Planty. Planty is surrounding the old town of Krakow and is built on the place of the former moat. We are now looking at Collegium Novum, the building from 19th century built in a neo-Gothic style. This is the heart of the university and the seat of the rector. This whole area around Collegium Novum and Collegium Maius is called the University Quarter, and there's still a lot of faculties that are placed in the old town of Krakow. Apart from that, there's also a modern campus outside. Now we'll have a look at this tree. It's the oak of freedom that was planted here in the springtime 1919 after Poland regained its independence after 123 years of the occupation made by the neighbors. There is 40,000 students studying today at the Jagiellonian University, and in its history, many of them were very famous. The most famous is the one on the column in front of us. This is Nicholas Copernicus, the astronomer and the discoverer of the heliocentric theory. Born in Toruń in northern Poland, but studied here for 4 years, and is known as one of the most famous students at the Jagiellonian University. And before I will tell you about another famous student from the Jagiellonian University who became someone very well known, let's walk together in the Planty Park. Planty Park is a favorite place for local people to walk, especially in the springtime and in the summer when it's full of students and young people in love. Of course, hard to picture it now, but it's called the Green Belt of Krakow. And now we got to another place of interest that I wanted to show you. This is Franciscan's convent and church. Franciscan friars came to Krakow at the beginning of the 13th century. They built the first church here, and here they are till today. And this place is also very much connected with the Pope John Paul II, who used to come here and prayed a lot. John Paul II was born as Karol Wojtyła in the city close to Krakow called Wadowice. When he was 18 years old, he came to Krakow to study at the Jagiellonian University, and he studied for 1 year the Polish language, Polish philology. During the Second World War, he discovered his vocation to become a priest, and he joined underground secret seminary school. Being a pope, when he visited Krakow, he always stayed in this building. For many Poles, he is considered the biggest Polish hero. He is commemorated in very many places in the city of Krakow. We came back to the Green Belt, the Planty Park. I wanted to show you on the map the route that we already made today and that we are still going to take. We started in the north on the Matejko Square, where we saw the monument of Grunwald battle. We walked around the Barbican. We saw the St. Florian Gate and Czartoryski Museum on one side, and the Theatre of Słowacki on the other side. And then we followed by Szpitalna Street through the little square behind the St. Mary's Basilica, and from it we entered the main square of Krakow. We walked through the cloth hall, we saw the tower of the former town hall, and later we entered the university quarter. Then we moved towards the Planty Park, where we are right now. On the way we saw Franciszkańska Street, Franciscan's Church, and the Bishop's Palace. This is where we are right now. What's left? We are going to see now the southern part of the old town of Kraków. We'll follow by the Planty Park, below the Wawel Hill. We will not be climbing it, I will just show you it from the outside. We will then walk by the Grodzka Street, the second part of the royal route, back to the main square. We are back in the Planty Park. I know we've been here already, but I can't stop myself of showing you this beautiful part of my city, especially in this quite outstanding snowy outfit. And just have a look at this one tree. It's one of the biggest trees in the planted park. I can imagine that this place may seem for you bizarrely deserted, but I'm just reminding you it's early in the morning and it's -10 Celsius. We are getting closer and closer to the Wawel Hill. You can already see the silhouette of the castle in the background. Krakow used to be the capital of Poland from 11th century until the beginning of the 17th. This is why here we still have the residence of the former Polish kings and queens. Afterwards, the capital was moved to Warsaw, but Krakow still has the original castle. We were so lucky we haven't been destroyed during the Second World War. This beautiful building on the left-hand side that you can see here is the seminary school for the priests. This is the school that was finished by Karol Wojtyła, the future Pope John Paul II. And we are also approaching two gentlemen sitting on the bench outside of the building and talking. Let's have a look. Who is it? This is Stefan Banach with his colleague. Stefan Banach was a famous Polish mathematician, the founder of modern functional analysis. Krakow indeed is a magical place. You can meet here famous scientists, poets, Nobel Prize winners, and future popes. Now we are close to the Wawel Hill. On the left-hand side you can see the silhouette of the castle, and on the right-hand side the treasury and the building of the cathedral. The cathedral is the seat of the bishops of Krakow. It's also a place very much connected with the royal history of Poland. It's a place where almost all Polish kings were crowned, they got married, and where they are buried today. Even when the capital was moved to Warsaw, the kings were coming down to Krakow for the coronations ceremonies. The area on the right-hand side that I just showed you is the direction of the Vistula River. On the left-hand side, you can see Kanonica Street, which is known to be the oldest street in the city, dates back to 14th and 15th century. Today, it's the most historical and elegant address. You can stay here if you want. There is a 5-star, beautiful Copernicus hotel. I'm walking around the Wawel Hill to show you the other facade. This is the southern part of it. You can see here the Renaissance silhouette of the castle. Inside of the castle, there is today a museum with many interesting exhibitions. Towards south, there is another part of Krakow, the district called Kazimierz, known today as the former Jewish quarter of the city. Kazimierz is very different than the center of Krakow. You can discover there the Jewish history and culture. I hope one day you'll come to Krakow and you'll have a chance to visit it with me. And now, we are getting back towards the main market square, heading towards the end of our tour. This is Grodzka Street, the second part of the royal route. Grodzka is also very commercial and hard to believe today, but it's always very crowded. Along Grodzka Street, there's 7 churches. Now we are approaching one of it. This is St. Andrew Church, one of the oldest churches in the city of Krakow. It dates back to the 11th century. It is a perfect example of the Romanesque art. Heavy limestone walls, small windows, and no entrance from the side of the street. You probably guess right why. The churches in medieval times played the role of shelters too, and when there was an attack of the enemy, the citizens were hiding into the churches and they were defending themselves from the inside. Directly adjacent to St. Andrew Church, there is another church, St. Peter's and Paul's Basilica. This church is from the 17th century and it's built in a Baroque style. It reminds too many Il Gesù Church in Rome. You can see outside of it the figures of 12 apostles and the symbol of the Jesuit order above the door, IHS. On the top of the facade, there is also an eagle, the symbol of Poland. And now, few more views at the houses on Grodzka Street. Here, for instance, there is a great restaurant with Polish cuisines, Under the Angels, pod Aniołami. Please remember when you come to Krakow. On the other side, you can see an interesting building with the emblems with the animals, the rhinoceros and the elephant. The tradition to decorate your house with the emblem goes back to the medieval times, when most of the people were illiterate. The only way to specify where exactly you live, or to find an address, was to describe the house where you live. So one lived on Grodzka Street under a rhinoceros, or another under the elephant. Here you can find the golden lion, which is the oldest emblem in the city of Krakow. It dates back to the 16th century. We continue on Grodzka Street, where I wanted to show you three locations. This is the Wyspiański Center that was founded by Andrzej Wajda, famous Polish movie director from Krakow, who received the Academy Honorary Award for his life achievements. The building of the today town hall, the back of the Franciscans Church, we already saw the other side of it, and on the other side, exactly opposite, the Dominicans convent. The Dominican friars also came to Krakow in the 13th century, and that's when they built this church here, and this is where they are till today. So as you can see from it, some things in Krakow never changed. This is why maybe we are often compared to the eternal city of Rome. And here we are, back on the main square. Now you can see it from another new perspective. The last thing that I wanted to show you before saying goodbye is this church. It's called the St. Adalbert Church, and it dates back to the 10th or 11th century. This side that I'm just showing you now, it's Romanesque, and it used to be the original entrance to the church when it was built. You can see that the level is 2 meters below the actual level of the main market square today, which also means that the city level has risen those 2 meters over its 1000 years of the history. And for the goodbyes, let's have a look at my favorite perspective on the main market square, with the two unequal towers of the St. Mary's Basilica. I hope to see you in person in Krakow. Bye bye, Janina.